By tomorrow evening, we're gonna learn about whether the National Guard can come into Portland, period, end of story. This one's gonna be a long one, so get some coffee and take a seat. My name is Tanvi Varma and I'm here to break it all down for you. I don't want to confuse you because there have been legal fights about pausing the deployment until the court could answer the bigger legal question, and that is whether the president has the authority to deploy Oregon's National Guard against the will of the state itself. By the way, it's that decision that's coming out by Sunday evening. So you might be wondering, how did we get here? President Trump has been trying to deploy the National Guard to Portland because he says protests outside the ICE facility have become a war zone. But some people do not agree with that assessment. The plaintiffs on this case are the state of Oregon, the city of Portland, and the state of California. Remember, California was dragged into this because the federal government tried to deploy the California National Guard after it tried to deploy the Oregon National Guard into Oregon. All right, so now back to the legal question. There's three reasons a president can activate a state's National Guard. One, if there's an invasion. Two, if there's a rebellion. Three, if the president can't enforce federal law using ordinary methods. So as we lawyers do, the two sides are arguing about what these terms mean. The Trump administration's arguing that there is a rebellion because there is a violent resistance that's impeding the enforcement of immigration law. So when protesters are standing in front of the driveway, for example, it may make it harder for ICE agents to get in and out of the facility. Whereas the state of Oregon says a rebellion is when there's some sort of organized violence that significantly impedes governing ability, which they say is just not happening. In fact, they're saying it's federal officers who are inflaming the situation outside the facility. They say federal officers are using a disproportionate amount of force against peaceful protesters. Oregon says officers have deployed tear gas and pepper balls on small numbers of peaceful protesters, which we've seen ourselves. On the other hand, the federal government is really leaning into the idea that the president needs help in enforcing federal immigration law in Portland. The defendants cite instances in which protesters have assaulted federal officers, in which protesters have vandalized the ICE facility, which we've seen, and when they've lit fires. One of the big incidents they refer to is on June 12th, in which over 450 protesters barricaded employees inside the facility, ignited fires, and engaged in direct confrontations with officers, resulting in 10 arrests. So the state of Oregon says that Portland police have been on top of the criminal behavior outside the ICE facility. They even had members of the Portland Police Department testify about their approach to policing, which they say they can prove helped reduce the criminality they were seeing in June. Okay, so if you've made it through this video, reward yourself and reach out to us at Katu.com if you have any questions. I went to law school so that you don't have to.